Hi, I'm Clay, and welcome to my talk on Kerry James Marshall. This is the first picture I found from Kerry James Marshall. It was done in 1976. It's a woodcut print, and it is very small. It's like 5 by 4 inches. So he started his career doing prints inspired by Charles White, who is a Harlem Renaissance artist. And this woodcut is actually a reference to Charles White's piece, Pope X, which also has a man's face in profile, creating a diagonal line across the picture plane with his beard. White and Marshall had a lot in common. They both used a lot of different mediums to make work which focused on the average black experience in the United States. And Marshall got to visit White's studio when he was a kid. And that's actually, like, seeing his process is actually what gave Marshall the confidence to pursue art himself. This one is almost a decade later. It's the first painting I found from Marshall. It's called Portrait of the Artist as a Shadow of His Former Self. Also very small, it's like 8 by 6.5 inches. And it's the first depiction of a simplified black figure that he did, which became a staple in the rest of his work. Just like the way that he's like solid black and you don't see anything except for his eyes and his teeth. So this is kind of like the low budget pilot episode of like the rest of his work. And in an Art 21 interview, he said that making figures like this that were like solid black helped him to reclaim the image of blackness as an emblem of power. He did this one about 6 years later. It's called The Invisible Man, inspired by the Ralph Ellison novel, which is really important to Kerry James Marshall. And it's in the same vein as a portrait of the artist as a shadow of his former self, but it's a lot bigger and it's now using acrylic instead of the egg tempera. It's still not as big as what he ends up getting to. This one's from 1994, about like 8 years later, I think. It's called Many Mansions, and this is where he's getting into the style which he is now known for. He's got the solid black figures. He's got a very big canvas, even bigger than The Invisible Man. He uses unstretched canvas so that he can make it like kind of like a mural, and he's trying to make it like a history painting. He's taking inspiration from artists like Gerald Coles, and his goal is to make black people more prominent in the canon of art history. This piece was also part of a series inspired by the housing projects in the civil rights movement. Marshall was fascinated by how the word garden like frequently appeared in the names for these projects, even though that they were typically unsafe, violent places. So this piece is all about juxtapositions. You can see the nice clothes that the men are wearing, the flowers, and the birds with the, they're holding a banner that says "Bless our happy home." Probably can't see it. But they're all kind of like in contradiction with the housing projects in the background. This one's called Pastimes. It's from 1997, so about like 3 years after Many Mansions. And it's even bigger than Many Mansions. I think it's cool how like every one of these gets bigger. And it's just supposed to be like a mundane picture of people having a picnic. And it's reminiscent of the leisure scenes that post-impressionists did, which he was very inspired by, which normally those scenes just depict Caucasian people. So what he was trying to do is just kind of like recreate those scenes in a sense, but with black people. In an article from Apollo magazine, Marshall said that I don't do pictures in which the figures are traumatized in any way. I'm trying to create a kind of normalcy, a kind of everydayness. So it's really just like, it's trying to show people that like black people are just regular human beings that like have picnics sometimes, you know? I think this is really cool. So he does those solid black figure paintings for the rest of his career. He's doing them like today. But he also does all these other different mediums, which he says reinforce like the message that his paintings have. So this is a stop motion from an installation that he did. And like I said, it's just trying to reinforce what he's doing in his other work in this installation, which is all trying to make black people more prominent in the canon of art history. He also made his own comic book. So this is from 1999, like a year after the stop motion that I just showed. It's on newsprint. It's bigger than like a regular printed comic book because he just has to do everything bigger, I guess. And he made it to like cover up these display cases at an installation at Carnegie Hall. So it's just like, they were just like kind of covered with comic book pages that he did. And it's like the characters are based off of the gods that African sculpture depicts. So they're kind of like Thor and Loki, but like with like African gods. So his character, Rhythm Master, becomes another staple throughout the rest of his career. Not as prominent as the Black Figures, but there are like different iterations of Rhythm Master in his later work, which I thought was cool. He also does sculpture. So this one is called Wake. It's from 2003, and he ran it to like 2005 and like changed it a little bit every time. So it's about like the trauma of slavery, the medallions with like, which are these little white things. I don't know if you can tell those are medallions. Those are actually portraits of the descendants of the 20 slaves who first landed in Jamestown in 1607. He also does like giant public art. This one's called A Monumental Journey. It's from 2018, and definitely like the biggest thing he's done. It's like 30 feet tall, 16 feet wide. It's a memorial to the 12 African American lawyers who founded the National Bar Association. And it's based on the talking drums that they have in Africa. So it's like basically like a giant talking drum, kind of like split in half. And yeah, so that's Kerry James Marshall. I thought he was really cool. I really liked how he used all the different mediums to do the same thing, which was try to get Black people more prominent in the canon of art history. And it's like he wasn't content to just have Black people more prominent in like the painting area of art history. You know, it's like he had to like have them more prominent in like all these different like disciplines. And yeah, I really respect that. Here's my bibliography.